Hey everyone, welcome back to Income Stacker. This is Randy Rodenhouse. In video 2 here, we're going to talk about the top 3 ways to build passive income. Now, of course, there's a lot of ways to build passive income, and I like to share with you the things that I think are the most important for the long term. By now, you've heard the word passive income several times and probably are asking yourself, what kind of passive income is he referring to, right? So what I'm not talking about is generating passive income through online marketing, e-commerce, blogging, writing books, dividend stocks, affiliate marketing, and so on. While all these things are good and possible and interesting, I think by far the most and best place to focus your attention when building passive income is on these 3 items here. Now, there are a few others that I like, but I just wanted to simplify it and talk about mortgage notes, private lending, and rental real estate. So buying mortgage notes, or sometimes they call a deed of trust, depending on the state. So if you're in the state of Texas, for example, it would be called a deed of trust. If you're in the state of South Carolina, it would be called a mortgage. Either way, it's basically buying these mortgage notes and deeds of trust. Second is private lending. Private lending to individuals that might be doing a fix and flip or something of that nature. And third is rental real estate, single family residential, apartments, and so on. Now, I'm not going to get into all the things like syndication, debt funds, equity funds, but those are also a great way to build passive income by investing in different funds, but I'll save that for another day. So let's get started with just simple mortgage notes or deed of trust investing. And why I like these are the following 5 reasons. 1, they're secured by real estate, right? No matter what happens, I'm always going to have the real estate backing my investment. Number 2, they're super passive. If you buy a mortgage note that has, let's say, a 30-year mortgage note, you're collecting payments for 30 years without doing a whole lot of anything. You usually have a servicing company that collects the payments and does all that work of collecting the payments and sending you back the payments and sending out the 1098. So it becomes pretty passive. Number 3, usually if you buy them right and you know what you're doing, you can get high yield, high returns. 4, it's consistent. Month in, month out, month in, month out. That money comes into your mailbox, right? And finally, it's set and forget. So how does it work from a 50,000-foot view? So a lender, let's say a bank or a credit union, private individual, whatever it may be, lends money and gets a promissory note and a mortgage. This mortgage or deed of trust and note can be sold similar to a house being sold, but the process, in my opinion, is much simpler. Now you, the note buyer, step into the shoes of the prior lender and start collecting monthly payments. And then you usually would get a servicing company, as I mentioned before, to collect the payments, manage the note, and so on. So again, make your life even more passive and even easier. So what determines how much you will pay for the note? Well, there's a lot of factors, and here's just a few. This is not an all-inclusive list, but it depends on the position, right? It might be a first mortgage note, second, third. It really depends. Typically, we buy first, but we've also bought seconds and thirds. But it really depends. The price is going to depend on what priority lien it is. Payment history, right? That's another big one. Is it paying on time? Is it paying sporadically? What's the situation? You have to calculate the internal rate of return. You have to know how much down payment was put down. How much skin do they have in the game? What's their credit history? Now that we'll talk about a little later, but credit history is not, depending on the type of note you're buying. I'm looking at notes that are paying consistently, and they don't always have perfect credit, but are paying consistently. But again, we'll get into that in future videos. Value of the collateral. That's very important, right? How valuable, I should say, is the property, right? So if you're buying a note for $60,000 and the house is worth $100,000, well, you're pretty assured you're going to get your money back. And then finally, condition of the collateral documentation. What does that mean? Well, the documentation is the note, the mortgage, the longes, the assignments. All these things you'll get when you buy a note, you got to make sure they're done correctly. You don't want a note that's not signed properly, or it hasn't been written out properly, or a mortgage, or whatever it may be. So you have to understand those things as well. So now, if we look at the private lending, the reasons I like private lending is a lot of the same things. If you look at the top 5 there, secured by real estate, passive, high yield, consistent, set and forget. The couple of things that are a little bit different with private lending are, what I say, that the collateral is a little cleaner in the sense that you're basically drawing up the note and mortgage here in this particular case. So you know it's clean because you drew it up, or your attorney or whatever has created that those documents. And so you can make sure they're correct. Second, the valuation is very clear in the sense that you can get an internal appraisal, where sometimes when I'm buying the note, I can't get an internal appraisal. I can't see inside the house. I can't get inside the house. A person is living there paying their mortgage, but I can get a BPO, maybe an external BPO, but I don't get as good of a feel. I don't know if the house is, inside the house is destroyed or not. Whereas when I'm doing private lending, well, I'm going to go to the house and have someone check it out, right? Inside and out. So I have a very clear valuation. So how does it work? Private lending, real estate. Let's say a real estate fix and flip person or a fix and hold person is looking to buy a property and get a loan from a private lender. The private lender lends the money to the rehabber and in return gets a mortgage and note secured on the subject property. Typically, the private lender lends the money to the rehabber interest only for a period of 6 to 36 months. Again, it determines, the private lender determines the period of time. And usually the loan to value's, 65, usually below 70%. Okay? So again, everybody's got their own criteria. Some people take more risk than others, but usually, we're in at roughly 65 cents in the dollar. The private lender collects payments until the loan matures, and at which time the private lender gets the entire principal balance back, right? And then guess what? Rinse and repeat. They'll go out and find either another deal with the same person or another person, and so on. So a little difference here between this and mortgage notes is usually the institutional notes anyways, they're a lot longer, meaning, they're 10, 15, 20, 30-year notes, where these are much shorter term notes. And once you get your money back, you got to go out and find another one, right? Find someone else to invest in. So what are factors to consider before making a loan to someone? Well, these are just some of the factors. One, the value of the collateral, right, versus the loan amount, right? How valuable is the asset, the house, or whatever you're lending on? Client's credit history, the client's investment track record. When I talk about client, I'm talking about the rehabber who's actually taking the money from you, right? Does the person have a track record of, fix and flipping houses successfully? What's their credit history? What's the yield going to be overall if this thing goes through to the entire term? Or what if it terminates early? What kind of yield am I going to get? The down payment amount, right? Are they, is the rehabber, the client, putting any skin in the game? I definitely want to see that. State's foreclosure timeline, right? Hey, it depends on the foreclosure timeline. In a state like South Carolina, where the foreclosure time frame is long, it might be a little bit different than in a state like Tennessee, where the foreclosure time frame is much shorter. So you have to look at those things as well. Okay, now let's talk about rental real estate. And these are some of the reasons why I like rental real estate. It's secured by real estate, of course. It's somewhat passive, not as passive as the note business or the private lending, in my opinion, but you can get clear valuations, I should say, as we spoke about before. The big differences are tax advantages, appreciation, principal pay down, and fast default process. So tax advantages such as you can write a lot off on your taxes. You can write off the maintenance, taxes, insurance, depreciation, and so on. The house will appreciate, hopefully, over time. That's kind of the icing on the cake, in my opinion. Principal pay down, you're going to probably get a loan on the house when you buy it. and therefore you're paying down your principal, and essentially the tenant is doing that, so that's great. And the default process is very quick, right? It's just an eviction. Unlike a foreclosure or something like that with a note, it's much quicker. So in essence, how does it work? From a 50,000 foot view, you buy a property, whether you buy it with a bank loan, owner finance it maybe you even use cash. Then you're going to find a tenant or a tenant buyer with some money to put down. Now, again, I like to buy houses and then basically find a tenant buyer, meaning someone that's going to get maybe a lease option, and they put maybe $10,000, $15,000 down as an option agreement. That way I don't just have a security deposit of $2,000. I have $10,000 backing that person up. So I'm looking for people that want to be homeowners, but that's a good way to go. Number 3, I collect monthly rent payments. 4, pay taxes, insurance, property management, maintenance, whatever it may be. And again, I get the benefits of the cash flow, the principal pay down, there's tax advantages, as I mentioned, and the appreciation. So there's a lot of upside to the rental real estate. You can buy single family real estate. You can buy multifamily real estate. It's all good. I'm not going into the nuances of each, just giving you a general idea of the fact that you have real estate, it's backed, and it's basically asset backed, right? So what determines how much you're going to pay for a rental? Well, there's a lot of factors, and this is just a few things that you want to keep in mind. Not all-inclusive list, but the rental rates in the area. Are things renting up fast? What are the rates? What's the value of the property? What's the condition? Is the area growing? Does it have a lot of employment opportunities? Is there good schools? You really have to do the math, come up with what's the net income, cash and cash return. Can you leverage it, right? Can you get a loan on the property to buy it to increase your returns? What are the current interest rates? The environment changes. Right now, it's a good environment, so you can get low interest rates. So all these factors are something you want to look at when buying rental real estate. Here's just a chart I just put together briefly comparing the notes, private lending, and rentals, and just comparing these 3 asset classes. And let's go through this real quickly. The first thing is yields. When buying notes, I put a range of 7 to 18%. However, I have purchased notes where my yields were much, much, much higher. I've had ones that if I got them reperforming at 50, 60%. But again, I'm just looking at the big picture overall. Over time, that's kind of what you're going to expect. Upside, what do I mean by that? Well, with notes, usually I'm buying them at a discount, so I do have some upside. Meaning if I bought a note that has a face value of $100,000, they owe $100,000, and I buy it at 80, well, guess what? What if they refinance? I'm going to suddenly make a $20,000 payday. That's going to skyrocket my yields into, probably 50 to 100%. Passive. How passive is it? Well, buying notes to me is the most passive. That's why I put a 5 on it. It scales from 1 to 5. The bigger the number, the more passive. Usually, these notes are 20, 30-year notes. So every month in, month out, you get that payment coming in, and you don't have to do a lot for it. You have a servicing company to service the note, so that's great. Collateral, again, you must review closely. If you don't have good collateral and something happens with the note, you might not be able to foreclose. If you have a poor note, a poor mortgage, poorly written, or poorly executed, or just a lot of mistakes you'll see on the collateral documentation. So you have to know how to evaluate and how to review those documentations. Valuation, usually when buying notes, you're only looking at the exterior. So you can get an exterior BPO. You can't get an interior appraisal because people aren't going to let you in your house, right? So this is the major difference between this and private lending and rentals, is that you can only look on the exterior and not on the interior. So you never know what you're going to get sometimes. I've had notes where I got them back, or houses, I should say, I got them back, and they look pretty bad inside, right? But since I bought them at a huge discount, I always made money. Emotional equity is a good thing, meaning people are emotionally attached to their house. They want to stay and pay. And mostly when they're owner-occupied, that's what I'm looking for, owner-occupied notes where, their families live there for a long time, their friends are there, and so on. Loss mitigation simply means what happens if they stop paying. If they stop paying, guess what? These are my options. 1, loan modification. That's my favorite one to do because I like stuff that pays. I don't really want the house all the time. I can do a deed in lieu, short sale, foreclosure. It's kind of the last resort type thing where if they don't pay, I get the house and I can resell the house, rent the house, sell the house on owner financing. There's a lot of options. And tax benefits, there's not a lot of tax benefits in the sense of your income from here is interest income typically, and interest income is usually ordinary income, taxed at ordinary income tax rates. So there's no huge tax benefits from notes or private lending. So if we look at the private lending, again, it's pretty much the same yields range. The upside, I should have probably broke out notes into non-performing and performing, but these are mainly performing I'm speaking of. With private lending, again, there's no upside, right? Because you lend $100,000 and you're going to get back $100,000 plus your interest. It is very passive again, so I gave it a 4. The collateral is clean. The valuation is good because you can get obviously interior and exterior appraisals. And there's no emotional equity because we're lending money to someone that wants to do a fix and flip or something of that nature. It's not their house. They don't live in it. Loss mitigation, you have the same options as notes, right? You can modify it. You can foreclose, take it back, deed in lieu, whatever. And then, again, tax-wise, it's interest income. Rentals, yields 5 to 15. And really just looking at it and talking to a lot of people, most people are renting a house and barely making 5 to 6%. If they include everything like their vacancy and all that, most people just don't do the math right. There is good upside because obviously rental real estate has gone up in value. Real estate in general has. So you have the appreciation aspect. It's fairly passive, not to me as so much as the note in private lending business, but it's still pretty passive. You get clean collateral. You can do the valuation, get an appraisal, interior appraisal, and exterior appraisal, of course. There's no emotional equity, and the loss mitigation process is just simply eviction, right? If someone doesn't pay, you evict them. So that's pretty straightforward. And finally, as we mentioned prior slides, the tax benefits are pretty enormous, and you can write off the depreciation, any maintenance, insurance, taxes, all that good stuff. So there's a big benefit there. So the common thread for all these investments is what? Well, they're all secured by real estate, and that's really what I love. When I'm getting passive income, and I'm very aware that all this money is going to come in every month, and if it doesn't, I'm not too worried about it because I'll get the asset back and I'll sell it and make money. So I'm not going to lose any of my capital. So it's great capital preservation. So in the next video, I'll discuss some detailed examples and case studies to help you better understand how this process works. All these examples I'm going to show you clearly demonstrate that building passive income in this manner will help you sleep at night, and your money's going to grow pretty quickly, and it's all collateralized on these hard assets. I'm also going to give you a bonus in the next video where I'm going to show you an experiment I did. Since I'm a former PhD in organic chemistry, I like to do experiments, right? And I looked at 2 small retirement accounts. I split them up into 2 small accounts, roughly $150,000 each, and I grew it to a multi-million-dollar account. So you'll see that. It's actually pretty amazing how it grew so fast over time, and we'll go through that as well in the next video. So hopefully that helps, and we'll see you on the next video.